Good negotiations can result in business success, and bad negotiations can set up failures. And so the ability to negotiate well and keep in mind some key points will come in handy. In this video, when we're talking about negotiation, we're talking about a discussion between two or more people who see value in and share the goal of reaching a business agreement. What we're not talking about is haggling over price or bargaining or bartering. So we think about negotiating in terms of discussing. There's some key things that come to mind that will help you prepare, such as know what you need before you get to the table and understand the other side. There's some things that will also help you facilitate negotiations, listening actively, and also in the middle of the discussion, preparing yourself to adjust. And then there might be some things that help you decide if a negotiation is good or not. Part of that is knowing what a good negotiation looks like, and the other part is knowing when to walk away. So before you get to the table, really you want to be prepared. Know what it is that your business needs. Are you liquidating? Are you under a first big contract? Are you the person at the negotiation table who is more desperate for the deal to work out? Are you going to concede more terms because of that desperation? Or are you in growth mode? Are you in rapid customer acquisition, where it's not so much that you're desperate, but you are going to sign people up and the terms of the deal are maybe not as concrete? Or perhaps they're even more concrete. Another thing is that what you want to do when you're going into the negotiation is you really want to be able to analyze, before you get to the table, the possible outcomes of the deal itself. How are they going to impact your business? How are they going to impact the other person's business? And keep in mind, it's more than just the sale. It's more than just the dollars transacted. It could be something as, if you're trying to scale up your customers, one of the things that you could be coming to terms with in the agreement is the ability to acquire the other person's customers, to be able to have a detailed list of people's names and contact info, or vice versa. Maybe they're interested in contacting you. Maybe you have some skills that you can offer them, or they have some skills they can offer you. And one way to actually help you know what you need is to basically build out a decision tree. A decision tree will give you basically the key points that you need in order for the negotiation to be successful. It gives you the ability to clearly identify why you will make a decision based on what you encounter in the negotiations. This also actually helps if you have somebody mediate your negotiations. Then you have a decision tree that you can hand to them, and then that way they will be able to best represent you. Another important point to think about is practice clearly articulating what it is that you need. This helps for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, it really reduces emotion. Negotiations can actually become quite emotional. What you don't want to do is present any defensiveness, because that's just not going to help the conversation at all. But practicing articulating what it is you need will also help you provide consistent communication and will help reduce confusion in the conversation. Another thing you need to do before you get to the table is understand the other side. Really know how you benefit them. What is it that they need? What job are they trying to do? And hopefully you're having these conversations before you actually enter in negotiations. And that way you'll really clearly understand and be able to empathize with them and speak to what are their biggest challenges. Understand what job is it that they're trying to do, what challenges they have with it, how do you help them, how do you bring value to them, what is it that they're doing now solving those challenges, and how will you change that? Another thing you should do before you get to the table is research. Do your research, be prepared. Why is it that they are at the table? Why do they want to negotiate with you? What motivates them to make decisions? And probably one of the most important things that you need to understand is who is the decision maker. If you're talking to someone who can't make the decisions, it's going to slow down the negotiation process. So try your best to get the decision maker at the table. And as part of that, you have to identify who it is before you even start negotiating. And then understand what it is that they value. And are you able to deliver this value? Be honest with yourself. That'll help you set reasonable expectations. And if you can deliver value to them, fantastic. How is it that you can do that? And also understand what are their constraints and your constraints. And it's helpful to talk to people, not only the people who you're going to enter into negotiations with, but experts in the industry. Be sure that you know if there are any standard terms for deals. And this is very much industry dependent, so it's important to talk to experts. Do your research before you get to the table. There is no cold calling in negotiating. You have to know before you go. And the best way to do that is to be prepared. And at this point, you want to do a quick check. What are your ideal outcomes? And when I say ideal outcomes, what we're really talking about is the terms of the agreement. What is it that they're going to lead to that are going to be ideal for your business? This will help you set reasonable expectations. And if you can understand what the ideal outcomes of the other party is, then you'll be able to have a very productive conversation and discussion. Another thing to think about, is there a mutually beneficial result? This is really important. In other words, can the negotiation end in both parties delivering value to each other? So let's say you prepare yourself and now you're ready to get to the table and start negotiating. What is it that needs to be done in order to have the best negotiation possible? Well, really, there are two things: listen and adjust. When we talk about listening, what we're really talking about is active listening. And it's something that's critical for you to practice inside of a negotiation. These are things like body language. When you're talking, what do you observe the other person doing? So it's very important to be able to see them. And vice versa. When they're talking, how are you responding? What body language are you using, and what does that convey to them? Another thing that's important to do is pause. When you're discussing a key point, something that's important for your company to actually achieve value out of the agreement, pause. This lets the other party not only digest the information, but to be able to respond to you in a meaningful way. Because remember, we want to have a productive conversation. And that's another thing. When you hear the other party say something from their perspective that is very valuable to them, be sure that you're repeating back these key points to them. People hear things in different ways. People have different perspectives. And that's a fantastic part of getting two parties to a table. But it can also very negatively impact the outcomes if we don't understand each other. So when you hear something, repeat it back. Make sure that you're understanding what it is that they mean. And be sure that, especially around the key points that are going to lead to the terms of the deal, make sure that both parties understand. One way to understand is to ask open-ended questions. Really get to the how and the why. And I guess, really, what you want to be doing is asking questions. Be open and honest about what you need. Clearly and consistently communicate what you can provide and what you cannot provide. This is of the utmost importance, because remember, this is what's going to make or break a deal. And what we don't want to set up is a deal that can never happen. And recognize when adjustments must be made. Usually it's the unexpected items, the unexpected points in a conversation that lead to adjustments within negotiations. So now let's talk about how this can be facilitated. Maybe you have a draft agreement going in, maybe you don't. Either way is okay. What you really want to be sure you have is an agenda. And you want to do this before you actually get to the table so that both parties have it when you're sitting at the table. The agenda should basically have a handful of items. Start off with the motivation. Why are the parties entering into negotiations? What is it that they value? What is it that they're seeking to do out of this? And that really leads us to goals. And when we talk about goals, we don't mean the goals of the actual negotiation itself. Those are important, include those. But what we want to be sure we capture are the goals from the perspectives of both parties that will basically lead to the best outcome of the terms of the agreement. So whatever you agree to inside of the negotiation, whatever the terms of the deal are, be sure that those align with the goals of all parties involved. And along that note, you do want to think about the goals of the companies inside of the agreement itself. And basically, you want to be sure that you have the objectives. And you want the objectives for every party involved in the negotiation. You want to be sure to capture everyone's perspectives. One of the most important points to be able to include in your agenda is that you leave plenty of room for discussion. And this is important because this is when you're going to be asking the hows and the whys. This is when you're going to be understanding each other. This is when you're going to be identifying the unexpected, identifying the places that need adjustment, and really hammering out the terms of the deal. And the last thing that you want to be sure that you get in the agenda is what happens after you leave the table. That's really important. You want to have actionable items that each party does. So let's say you've prepared yourself, you've actually lived through the negotiation. What happens next? How do you make decisions on the negotiation? So the first thing to consider is, what is a successful negotiation? Remember, it's a mutual agreement. And in this very specific case, we're talking about a mutual business agreement where both parties can derive value. So it must address the key points. It must address basically the terms of the deal. It needs to include the perspectives of all parties. Executable really means that it can be signed and begun. All right, a couple of other things that successful negotiations have is that it provides the motivation. Why is it that people are here? Why is it that people are actually entering into the discussion? And it identifies successful outcomes. It also needs to provide the objectives and responsibilities of each party. And this is critically important because this is going to actually shape the business agreement moving forward. So you want to be clear up front what it is that each party is going to do. All right, and then let's talk about when to walk away. And this one's really, really tough. It could be something as straightforward as you can't deliver or they can't deliver. Of course, the deal is not going to work out. You're going to walk away. Another thing to think about is if either party isn't getting what they need. There are some viewpoints that compromising and conceding terms is something that's very important inside of negotiations. But really, if you think about it, too much compromise, then there's not enough benefit. And it's from either side. So as you go into the negotiation, think about yourself, yes, but also try your best to empathize with the other party. Another thing that you can be faced with when you're inside of a negotiation is an ultimatum that you just are not comfortable with. And in that case, it's okay to walk away. Hopefully, no one is faced with confrontation, but it happens. And if you are faced with confrontation, if you just are not jiving with the person, it's okay to walk away. And keep in mind, sometimes it just doesn't work out. These are all reasons for you to walk away. Hopefully this video has given you and your team some insights into how to have productive negotiations. Best wishes for productive and engaging conversations in the future.